Hey everyone, Kevin here with Victory 4x4. In this video, we're going to be installing our air compressor mount for the single and dual ARB compressors in this 200 series Land Cruiser. Now before we get this installed in the vehicle, we'll do just a little bit of an overview out here. So with the main mounting bracket, you can see a couple different hole patterns on here, a slightly larger set of holes in the center and a slightly smaller set out on the outside. That is because this is designed to accommodate both the dual and single ARB air compressors, the single being the center pattern here and the dual kind of taking up the 8 outside holes. Now with that being said, most of you probably know that a lot of aftermarket compressors share this same mounting pattern, so keep in mind that we are installing it and test fitting it with the ARB compressors, but a lot of others may fit. We just have not physically installed them here in the truck, so you're kind of using your own discretion when you go with a different manufacturer's compressor. You will typically be bolting your compressor down onto this mounting platform before you install it into the truck, but we're going to kind of show you everything with it empty, with no compressor on here, so you can get a better look at where your brackets and hardware are going to be when getting everything installed. So we'll start with the main mounting platform as well as the lower mounting bracket. These will kind of nest together with the lower bracket underneath. The 2 outside holes here should line up, as well as the main one here with the pre-installed nut in the lower bracket. You can then grab one of the 1/4-20 hex head bolts with a washer to install here through the front. And all of this is just going to be left finger tight for now, and we'll tighten that up once everything is secured down in the truck. Now if you are running the single compressor and again using these 4 holes toward the center, this is going to be left open out here, and we want you to bolt these 2 together where they overlap. So that area we provide you 1/4-20 button heads with serrated flange nuts that you can bolt in place here and tighten up with a 5/32 hex to secure this. And if you are installing the larger dual compressor, you'll just use the provided ARB hardware right through these holes into the bottom of the compressor itself. From here you have the 2 rear mounting brackets to install. Those are going to go into pre-installed nuts here on the back, so that makes it easy from a hardware perspective. You have one that's kind of straight and one with a little bit of a curve to it. So the curved one is going to go over on this side, which is the side with the kind of air chuck mount, just for reference there. And these are going to bolt in with those 1/4-20 hex head bolts as well. This one can go on at this time and again just be left a little bit loose. You want to ideally leave this one out and install it once this goes into the truck, so that you have enough room to get this bracket kind of maneuvered down into position. With both of these, they have a shorter and a longer slot. The longer slot is going in against the mount here, so pay attention to that as well when getting these installed. So under the hood, the passenger side rear corner of the engine bay is roughly where the bracket is going to be mounted, just above this electrical box. The 2 brackets that hang off of the back are going to go to these 2 studs that you see here on the firewall, and this one further in toward the inside does have a factory nut that needs to be removed using a 10mm socket before the bracket goes in place. Keep track of this nut because we will reuse it to secure our bracket. We can then take our partially assembled mount and feed it down into this location, keeping in mind that you would again typically have your compressor on here at this time. We'll line that back bracket up with the stud there, and we can then, at least loosely for now, reinstall that factory nut. You can then feed the second rear mounting bracket in with that remaining 1/4-20 hex head bolt. Here you have to kind of get it lined up on that stud and lined up with the pre-installed nut in the compressor mount all at the same time. And since you can't really see back here, yes, this can be a little bit tedious, but if you take your time in here, it shouldn't be overly difficult, and you can get that hardware started. And you can then find the M6 flanged hex head that we provide to feed down into this location and start on what was that empty factory stud. Now remembering back to your bracket loose out on the cart, it had 2 mounting tabs on the underside bracket or main support bracket that's underneath here. That does have 2 holes that you'll need to install the provided M6 button heads into. It does get a little tight down in here, so kind of a tip or something that works well for us. I've just got a little bit of electrical tape holding this onto our socket here that will hold it well enough that I can get this started in the hole, reaching down in here, but it's not holding so tight that I can't just pull the tape and the tool off once everything's started and then reach back down in there and finish tightening things up. So use the tools you have available to you there. If you can get your hands in here, great, but you want to get both of these started. Now, while we are still talking about those same 2 holes, ours from the factory were kind of filled in with some seemingly rubberized undercoating of some sort that was sprayed in the wheel liner from the factory. So you may have to clear that out either with a tap or even just a small prick point punch from the top side, something to open those threads up and get them cleaned up so that you can start these button heads with relative ease. So keep that in mind, knowing that you may want to quickly test fit this in here to locate those and clean up the threads before everything goes in and before you're trying to fight hardware down in that tight location. So from there, again, keeping in mind that you should have a compressor in place at this time. One more time, because you won't have access to that lower hardware with everything in place, you'll now need to reach around in here and get all your hardware tight. So it's going to be a 10 mil socket again on the 2 nuts back on the firewall. You'll need a 7/16 wrench for all the hex bolts holding our brackets together, and then a 4 mil hex down into those M6 button heads going down into the top of that wheel liner or substructure in here. And then if you hadn't tightened the hardware holding the 2 brackets together out here, again, that is a 5/32 hex. Now that's pretty much all the info you need to get this thing secured in here. But a couple things we do want to point out again with the single versus dual compressor. On the single, you can see that the air hose fitting is kind of nice and low, pretty much flush with the top of the compressor itself, and that you should be good to go as far as leaving it in place there and running it without any clearance issues across the top. However, on the dual, when you thread one of these in, you can see that it sticks up above the top side of the compressor quite a bit, and that is going to cause some interference with the bottom of the hood. So for that, we provide you a remote mount out here on the side that you probably have seen already at this point. And if you're going to be installing this setup, you'll need to get the proper kind of 90-degree fitting as well as the air hose and everything to get it out to that remote mount tab. So keep that in mind when ordering your compressor and this mounting bracket. And then from there, you'll just need to follow manufacturer's instructions to get everything wired up properly and functioning over here. So with all that information, you should have everything you need to get your compressor and mounting bracket installed. But as always, if you guys have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to us. You can always send us an email at info@victory4x4.com or just call us at 269-459-8447.